And we are live. Welcome to another episode of today's podcast. And I just want to say this is the second time I've met Dustin on Zoom. And prior to that, I added him on LinkedIn and I've been following him and his work. And that's essentially all you guys need to do. You just have to network, comment, and just try just DMing people and see what they say. And it's always been something soft, all about relationship building. And now we're at this point. And for those that don't know, Dustin has been really active on LinkedIn with his carousel posts, with his uh, photo posts on LinkedIn. But he's massive in the space in LinkedIn. But before I give too much away, how are you going, Dustin?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're all good. You're all good. And for those that don't know who you are, Dustin, can you give us 3 points about who you are, what you do, and why you've chosen LinkedIn as the place to do marketing?
Sure. Yeah. I decided to grow my personal brand on LinkedIn because it seemed to be a place that had the right audience for what I was looking for, and then chose marketing because I have have a background in sales, and it's just been kind of a natural fit to market to the masses. You know, building a personal brand, going online, being active on social. You're marketing to a huge audience. So that kind of leads into that.
Nice. And that sounds quite similar to my journey. I was in sales as well, and I'm quite surprised how little of my cohort or my colleagues are building personal brands. They're probably doing their own thing, like actually working. But for you, what was your transition from sales into marketing, and why did you make that transition? And what was your thought process behind that?
Just the audience side of things, it seemed like it would be, it would lead into basically building a personal brand. You're you're proving the concept of being able to market to the masses. You're pinpointing what the struggles of your audience. You're speaking on those things, and then you're basically growing the brand, figuring it out what yeah, crafting the right message to them, I would say.
Of course. And I definitely remember when I was fresh into LinkedIn, I'm still fresh, and I was
Mhm.
thinking about what to talk about. And I was pretty much talking about why there's not enough, or that we need more salespeople learning more about marketing because essentially they're kind of halfway there, but they're just not producing content or they're just not doing any form of branding, especially personal branding. And I generally feel like your personal brand is way more effective than a resume. I mean, on top of case studies, I feel like even if you're not trying to do a company, that's just going to help get you more work. So for you, what was your journey like? Because you've got a massive following. Can you just lay out what you
Sure.
did in terms of getting from zero to, I think it's 7K now or more?
Yeah, it's about seven away from 8,000 now. So I'm getting there. But yeah, basically kind of, from about 650 back in November last year, and then to growing to where I'm at now. The motivator was, trying to get my name more out there, be prominent in a niche, and decide or basically, building a personal brand, like you said, is going to be head and shoulders above any sort of resume that you can put out there because your constant posts, your interactions with people, the uh, feel for, you know, basically like it's a lot like a company where you're building emotions around your name, so to speak, and people get to have interactions with you. They get to understand what values you have, and they get to identify similarly to your brand. And I think that just speaks to future opportunities that you can have, future employment, future connections that you can build with people, collaborating, all that good stuff.
Nice. And I want to get to know your journey between since November last year to now, getting to 7K. What specifically are you niching down towards, or are you just being quite general? And what has the last, like, it sounds like almost like a year look like for you? Like, have you gotten any clients, and what have clients said to you? Have you said no? Has there been kind of like weird work or really, really good work that you've seen along the way in LinkedIn? Because you've got way more experience than me. I'll be honest, I just start this is my fourth week, so still on training wheels, but keen to get your experience, especially what you were doing in the 4 weeks as well.
Sure, sure. Yeah, what I've done, I started just trying to be consistent with posting. Figured that would be maybe the step to growth. So I was posting twice a day for months. Never really got any sort of traction. Then I started to understand that, you have to engage to get engagement. It seems obvious, but it just didn't click for me until a certain point. So then I did that. It kind of grew from there. You get more followers when you start getting your name out there more, because as you engage, you get more exposure. They say comments are like mini posts, because you can use that platform, so to speak, if you comment on a larger creator's following, you can get some exposure from the other people that are commenting on that. So it's like a mini post. It gives them a flavor for what you're all about. You can add to the conversation, provide value up front before they even figure out who you are. So I did that, and then just slowly tried to get my content game better. Tried to, through AI, figure out the topics that might resonate with my audience more, and then create a spreadsheet pretty much of all of those different topics, and then start batching content together to build those. Research better hooks that I can use. Like using like the numbers. Top 5 reasons to such and such. Um, and then basically just keep trying to level up my game, learn from new or from bigger creators, and yeah, just try and get my name out there, I would say.
I would definitely say your name is out there. I saw something 2 days ago. You were on someone else's post in terms of like the top five leading voices in LinkedIn or
Oh
something like
yeah.
that. Yeah, talk us
Hmm.
about that and how that happened, because that I don't know if that's a feature in LinkedIn because I noticed it in other people's accounts, but how did that happen?
Sure. So in terms of top voice, it's just basically contributing articles that you can do. But yeah, I was featured on another account. Her account has, she's got about, I believe, about 10,000 followers, and she just kind of, I don't know if it's monthly or weekly, picks out some posts that she finds inspiring.
Yeah.
And so I collaborated with another guy that I have connected with, and really hit it off with, and we we were ended up being featured on her weekly post, I believe it is. So that was kind of fun.
Oh, that's so good. And when you were talking about reach before and getting that pulse, did that kind of reach with having that top voice on LinkedIn? How did that affect following and interactions and inbound and outbound for you?
Sure. I haven't noticed a lot on just LinkedIn's, badge that is featured on your profile. But overall, I would say that leads to credibility. Like
Yeah.
I look at other people's profiles. If I see that on there, I know they're at least somewhat active on the platform to be worthy of connecting with, and continuing the conversation with. Because if it's just a one-way conversation, and you can't really build any value with it, it's hard to justify any sort of connection, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's that orange little eye badge that you have under the name that definitely adds that credibility, especially when you're scrolling down their profile. It definitely adds like some kind of level of like assurance, like, oh, this guy definitely has done a big amount of work. I wanted to ask you about just posting every day. For me, I'm still trying to figure out the flow in terms of content production because content can be a massive grind, mainly because of the fact that you need to keep coming up with ideas. But what have you seen in your data in terms of repurposing ideas or repurposing posts? Do you copy and paste posts that are performing really, really well, like a month ago or 6 months ago, and just repaste it? Because I know that in terms of content, you're not guaranteed that everyone's going to see it again. So are you just trying to do it again just to see how it performs, or are you just creating new ideas on the fly every single time?
Sure. So that's a good question because early on, yeah, I did a ton of, every 2 months, I would say I would recycle content, kind of evolve on it, build on the ideas that I had posted about, even revamp maybe the graphic that I've included with it. And that I did notice, got about the same amount of exposure and engagement as what it did previously. So I can at least kind of fill in some of the blanks where I don't want to create content for 7 days a week. So that did help things. I would say between about 2 to 3 weeks ago, I started pretty much doing a carousel every day, and that has got me a lot more reach. So I would say if you don't want to do video, do carousels for sure, and do those every day. Do top five reasons, do top eight, things that nobody's talking about, that kind of stuff. Um, and then that way it just leads in, gives you a framework that you can pretty much fill in your information when ChatGPT or Gemini gives you a topic. And then so yeah, in the last 2 3 weeks I haven't really recycled any content, but previous to that I was, and it was working really well.
Yeah, nice because yeah, if you're on the content grind, you're pretty much on like this treadmill, just oh, what do I think of next? What do I think of next? And a lot of the time, it's just all about just building credibility and just building your following base. And it's all about how do I just how do I turn this into like a side project? Because ultimately, when you put out content, you're not just doing it blindly because you have to look at the metrics and what went well and what went wrong. But based on what you've seen with what you've been posting for almost a year, what is working for you that you're going to be like, oh, this is my bread and butter. I know that if I can't think of anything, I'm just going to do this. I know you said kind of carousel, but more so like tactics and I guess how you frame hooks, and also what are you experimenting on to make sure that content production is consistent for the next year as well. Because I know people just it's just a massive grind. Because ultimately, if you think of digital marketing and organic, you kind of have to do it forever.
That's true. Yeah, you do have to do it forever, pretty much. I basically have about the most primitive like Excel spreadsheet, like a Google Doc that you can think of, that I like to keep a lot of my content ideas all together there. So then from there I can build on different ones, recycle different ones. And then I use buffer.com for actually scheduling out my stuff, so I can like go back on the calendar, find an old post, you know, duplicate it, and then just update different pieces of it. In terms of hooks, I like to, use the numbers, use questions, use emotion invoking questions like pain point kind of stuff. Try and get people to uh, just kind of get, feel something to really just trigger some sort of, response to it. The type of customers that I've, or not customers, but audience that I've really gone after recently are creators. And I would say because they get me the most engagement. And then from there, pretty much, social media marketing in general is two different phases, whether it's a company trying to create their, daily posts or 3 times a week posts for their product, for their service, that kind of thing. And they're building a brand too versus personal brand stuff and, just creators online. So smaller ones, they look up to me. I look up to bigger ones, and then so it's all kind of a cycle. But pretty much between trying to focus on companies building a brand versus individuals building a personal brand, I try and cater both, basically my message to both of those groups so
Yeah,
that I can get the engagement and then I can get the potential clients reaching out too.
nice. It's very interesting you say it about creators. I'm not too sure what you've noticed last year towards this year, but essentially the whole idea of how I got into LinkedIn was of the fact that they were slowly going to introduce a For You page, which is like essentially like Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. What
Mhm.
have you seen in terms of the uptick, if there is any, in the past couple of months in terms of just personal brands and single individual creators trying to find how LinkedIn works or the algorithm works versus last year, and how you're servicing that part of LinkedIn versus, versus telling the bigger companies like, hey, did you know that LinkedIn's going to start to roll out these videos? Like maybe you should start doing videos, or I don't know. What have you seen in the last couple of months?
In terms of my reach, I haven't seen a ton of uptick in terms of views beyond like when I switched over to carousels, because I would say the carousels generally just get more reach than just your standard post, whether it's text or an image file. I would say videos, have really jumped in terms of viewership. And then I haven't seen a huge. I guess I haven't really noticed a huge, massive amount more people that are trying to create a personal brand. And I think a lot of the issue with even, if there are more users trying to be more active doing that stuff, a lot of them get burned out just because they don't have the right mindset going in. So they think that it'll be a pretty quick overall turnaround where they'll grow fast. They see other people saying, "Oh yeah, I've got, thousands of followers in a couple months," and the majority of those people don't ever get, they don't see that kind of growth, especially early on. And you only start to see that growth after, compounding efforts. I would say like the last month, I've gotten a lot more followers than I had, previous months before that. And I would have never got there if I went in thinking that I was going to get, thousands of followers in a single month. So yeah, I mean, I think we can continue to see more people doing it, and I think you eventually will. But unless they unless they realize that it's going to be a grind, they'll burn themselves out pretty quick.
For sure, definitely. And I'm just really curious on your end, why did you pick LinkedIn last year as opposed to other forms like YouTube or maybe even Instagram, especially if you're doing carousels or photo type posts? But why specifically LinkedIn for like your digital marketing topics?
Sure. So I would say that I picked LinkedIn initially. Let's rewind. I went to X, Twitter, X,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it, and just tried to kind of get, copywriting figured out, try and engage with the community, figure out how to grow from there. And it was really inconsistent. Even when you do engage with other creators, a lot of them are, it's kind of I don't know. What I ended up getting out of it was kind of a snobby group because nobody wants to follow anybody and everybody wants to just get followers. So it's really difficult to get any sort of consistency in followers. I mean, that was just me. I didn't it didn't catch on for me. Others it works for. But LinkedIn, I saw a lot more traction, and I was kind of posting things, testing things out on each platform, and so I ended up seeing more traction with LinkedIn. I started focusing more attention on that. I realized that in social media marketing, I was trying to go for business owners anyway. and I feel like a lot more business owners are on LinkedIn, at least in terms of any other platform. So I picked LinkedIn versus, like a Facebook or an Instagram, mostly because I've got personal pages on both of those, and I didn't really know exactly how to transition one of those personal pages to a professional page, or set up a page separate from my own. Um, it was just, a muddy process that I didn't really think too much into. I more just jumped into LinkedIn and ran with it.
Nice. And I like the whole idea how you've tried different types of platforms because people get the thought that if you just repurpose every single thing as the same content into every single platform, you're going to get four times the reach. Some people agree with that train of thought, but for me, I like to focus on one or two. Two, because I'm pretty bullish on video, so I can repurpose this on YouTube. But
Mhm.
I ultimately feel just focusing on one and just really understanding how one works because the algorithms for all of them are very, very different. Plus, the people on it are very, very different, which essentially are the people that you're trying to build, the audience you're trying to build. Because as you were saying earlier, the people on X are they could be business owners as well, but they're so different in terms of how they want to receive the content versus people on LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. It's all about messaging ultimately, and that's pretty much what marketing is, and also building a community because we all know that just doing this by yourself you can get super super lonely. And you're like, oh, is this right or is this wrong? Like it's just a weird kind of feeling how you're like, okay, I just got to grind this, but I just want the reason why I'm asking this is. Oh, where I'm getting to is what's the importance of just community in terms of longevity of content creation? Because especially when you're saying people can burn out, I generally feel like people burn out because they're just doing it by themselves for a long extended amount of time, and they've just got no one to kind of be their soundboard and be like, "Hey, what are you seeing? This is what I'm seeing, etc., etc."
Sure. Yeah, what I did was, try and reach out, have virtual meetings with a lot of different people, kind of pick their brain on what they're seeing, and their strategy and everything behind it, and then share pretty much whatever everything that I'm kind of going through at that moment. It is kind of difficult because you will connect with people and see that they, either aren't getting the growth that you think that they should get, or they aren't, or maybe they quit, and they just, it's kind of sad to see that, but at the same time, they're doing what they think is most valuable, and whether it's offline building something or whatever it is. But so yeah, I mean, you do get a decent amount of, um, I would say, motivation, just meeting new people, getting some, you know understanding the personalities behind it. And that's where I tried to get more recently, do like the collaboration stuff, the team up posts, and then just kind of build off of other people's audiences. And for the most part, it's been, either accounts around the same size as mine or a little bit smaller. I like to try and, even the smaller accounts, if I post something and their information's on there, it's pretty cool to be able to see a decent amount of engagement that I've been able to build up over an extended period of time. So it almost, hopefully, it inspires them to see that is attainable, that they can get up to that point. And then, I mean, I'm just trying to, build even beyond like the 100 likes or comments a post. I'm trying to, because I see, like, early on, I was happy with 20, 30 likes and comments per post. And then I see, you're looking at the 50 to 60, and then you get up to 50 and 60, and then you want 100. And then, now I'm checking out people that are at 300 comments, and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to get to that point? So pretty much you just keep, I mean, people say that moving the goalpost is kind of keeps you from ever being happy, but at the same time, it just it just inspires me to go for more, to get more reach, to and then to benefit from all the any opportunities that come along with that reach.
Of course. And I want to get your perspective on this, especially if you're looking at accounts that are doing those numbers, like even 50, definitely 100. But do you actually see yourself commenting on 100 posts and just building relationships off of those posts? Or you want to start building a team around that just to save you time, just so you don't have time delegated away from content creation, scheduling, and knowing what to say? Because when you say those numbers, you're essentially scaling, but how does that look like on your end? Are you still going to do it solo? Are you doing it solo already? Or how are you going to address 100 comments every single day? Because that surely
Sure. That,
might not, take more than
I know
an hour.
that's something that I've thought about and that a lot of people have, voiced concern about, like trying to keep up with any comments. And I don't try to. I don't try and keep up with that many comments. I've actually scaled back a little bit on commenting on other people's stuff. I try and still, build connections and uh, and really support other people, but it just I don't keep up with my DMs like I should. I don't keep up with the comments like I should. And I mean it's still working, luckily, but yeah, I would say that it's scalable if you hire another assistant or something like that to just keep up with the comments, but then at the same time it's not the same it's not you replying to the comments then at that point. So is it really authentic? I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really figured out the answer to that question. I scaled back my some of my time on the platform recently, right around the same time that it kind of picked up for me. Um, and I haven't seen a drop off with it, but at the same time, I feel like the better the better your content is, the less the less engagement that you have to put out there to get engagement. I mean, that might be that might not be a team player kind of thing to do, but I still try and support the accounts that I or the people that I conversate with quite often.
Of course. And that just sounds like a healthy way to approach it because one, baseline level, you're the consumer, so you're on the other end just consuming information and most likely is on whatever platform, and then you're just consuming blindlessly. And then the next step is okay, I'm just consuming blindlessly. Let's actually just make some stuff. And now like we're at the level of just making content and producing content almost every day. But then you just leave yourself the same problem. Okay, I'm still on my phone. Like there's still outside life, there's still life outside of LinkedIn, like family, friends, work.
Mhm.
That seems like total sense because again, it's going back to the same whole theme that content is a grind. You got to do it forever. I mean, even if you're doing really, really well, you've got to have a break because you can't just be like a slave to just making content on and on and on because where's the creative juices after that? Because I generally feel that having a break off of anything, she's like, oh, okay, my brain can finally relax. And then even just sometimes, I'm not too sure if you use this technique where you just don't have music on or you're just driving the car by yourself and then just something just comes up or like there's a big plethora of information that just comes up like, oh, where did this come from? It's just like you trapping creative thoughts coming out. But just wanted to get your take on what you've been doing if you have been off LinkedIn for a bit and how's that changed your workflow and your creative process moving forward.
Sure. I don't take like actual like full days off of LinkedIn ever. It's more just like during the day.
Yeah.
I have a day job, so I need to do that. But beyond that, nights, weekends, I'll do some, but mostly when I go to bed. Um, there we go. My light is on a auto dimmer or auto turn
Okay.
off. But anyway, um, yeah. So I'll usually before I go to bed at night. That's probably not a great time to be on your phone, but I'll reply back to comments and DMs and that kind of stuff. But Um, Overall, yeah, I take a little bit of break, and then it's kind of taken up some of my like actual book reading. So I'll do audiobooks and instead, and that way I'm able to get some knowledge still consumed during the day. Um, but yeah, pretty much I take different parts of the day off just so that I can kind of recharge. And then when I do end up, I am creating uh, content, then I'm able to. It's kind of like a creative outlet, so I'm able to explore some of those, new designs or something like that. I'll go on Pinterest, and I've been inspired recently by a lot of that stuff because it's gotten my attention being I've started to get more views on Pinterest. So it's kind of cool. I'll post a lot of my quotes and stuff on there. Some of my marketing content I'll post on there. And then so I've noticed a huge uptick in views on there. Slower, super slow growth in terms of following, but it's pretty cool. And that kind of recharges my batteries that way too.
Yeah, nice. And that's interesting that you say that even without being super active on LinkedIn, that you're still getting the same amount of traction in terms of engagement and impressions. I remember when I first started, I was on LinkedIn all the time. And I was thinking it'll probably be I'll be posting on the same day, but then I have to find out a strategy and a plan just to make it a bit more long term because me just posting every day just did not make sense. But I was measuring just the week's worth of how things were going. And I've noticed that if you're not posting and you're just on the whole platform, just scrolling and messaging, I feel like the algorithm does take that into account to help boost your actual posts. And I noticed last week I wasn't as active, like almost less than half an hour on LinkedIn, and my posts haven't been doing so well. So it's interesting to see that whether or not it's a long-term thing for age profile that like regardless if you're on heaps of times that the algorithm or whatever is on the social media platform still gonna reward you for being on that long. It's interesting to see what would happen in terms of that. But I do want to touch on what you were saying earlier about collaborations, because that was something that I was testing earlier on. For me, I was just tagging people's names and that worked to some degree. And I need to go back into it. And I'm glad that you raised it up because I completely have not been doing that. But I've seen you doing it recently, mostly with one tagging other creators' names and other personal brands' names, and you also do like a photo or carousel with your face and their face. Can you tell me where you got this idea from and why have you started implementing this with your content?
Sure. I can't exactly remember where I saw it. I've seen it at a few different creators will do that kind of stuff, and they'll have a carousel with both of their faces on it and have it look pretty stylish. But um, yeah, that was one thing that just kind of sparked, and I was like, I need to start doing this, and even going beyond like the actual collaborating. And if you were to go and try and basically take a lot of the insights from some of the bigger creators. You could literally put yourself or put them on your carousel, put you on the carousel, not necessarily call it a collaboration, but to say, this is what this person is, like Yasmin Alik. You could say, this is what he preaches about LinkedIn growth. Here's what I, kind of see in terms of like merging our styles together. And then, I mean, it's not like he's going to look at the post and say, hey, take that down. He's going to, if you're saying something nice about him and you're just trying to build your brand along with showing that you're inspired by his, nobody's gonna nobody's gonna ever fault you for that. So I feel like that can really get you a lot of exposure that way.
And and how has that been looking like when you compare it to just your normal carousel LinkedIn posts with no collaboration? Have you been testing out and seeing which performs well? And are you going to be doing more collaborations in the future, or are you just going back to your stock standard normal carousel posts?
Sure. I do have a list of future collaborations already put together, um, whether they're a spin-off of what I've already done with certain people, secondary kind of posts, different topics, or just other creators. You're one of them. You're basically next on the list that I need to
Yeah,
get 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 it set up. Pretty much send you the final draft, and then we can kind of go from there. But um, yeah, that's pretty much how I've been setting it up. Is I'll send the concept art, and then basically the copy, and then figure out what you would want to edit on that kind of thing after you've told me like the topic, and then from there we set a date and post it. So then that way it's sharing thoughts, but it's not like clashing on any sort of framework idea kind of stuff. It's a topic that both of us have already decided to join forces on, and then so that has really made things streamlined for me to be able to pretty much talk to somebody, agree that we should collaborate, um, agree on the topic, and within 2-3 days we can post something.
for sure. And I'm glad that you're saying all this because for those that don't know, um, I'm just started LinkedIn, and for Dustin to be connecting with just brand new personal brands, like it says a lot about his character because anyone on his level would be most likely shooting up in terms of just aiming towards up. But it kind of seems like a good strategy is just be absolutely genuine and be caring. So I both a combination of higher profiles and also low profiles, whether it's teaching or supporting, because ultimately that just shows that your type of personality and your type of style and vibe. Because when it comes to working in business, ultimately we're looking for the outcome and the fulfillment, but everyone is doing digital marketing and everyone's got their own take, and there's always going to be some kind of similarities with producing content. But when you're working with people, how much does personality play in terms of like, yeah, I'd love to do a collaboration with you, or no, it seems like we're not a good fit because you might be able to fulfill, but I just don't feel like our personalities are going to work well.
Sure. um yeah, so I've been able to kind of build up some relationships through comments and DMs, and just supporting each other's content kind of stuff. That really got me started to think about collaboration. Because you'll comment on my stuff, I'll comment on your stuff. We'll kind of share some jokes, some insights, that kind of thing. Shoot a DM and be like, hey, really enjoyed this post, you doing that. And just kind of those back and forth. It's you kind of build up relationships over time, and kind of appreciate their style of posts, and then you kind of get an idea on the values that they have. You see if it kind of aligns with yours, even if it's a different um, even if it's a different industry, completely, whether it's sales or marketing, or it's personal brand versus B2B. It really kind of all overlaps, I would say, and everybody can kind of build up on each other's platform. And the reason I like to go with some of the smaller creators too, and do some collaboration is, like I was saying earlier, I like to, I mean, one, it would be, that I wish more would have done that when I was smaller and trying to figure it out. And then two, just to be able to have them get a taste of like the amount of engagement that they could potentially command in future, just by following a few steps that it took me a long time to learn. um it can help them grow faster than I was even able to grow. So it's kind of passing along knowledge. It's a philosophy that I've always been strong in believing.
And that's definitely showing, especially how you communicate and how you're collaborating and how you're posting. It's such an interesting style. And I feel like a lot of more accounts at your level, they're not as active as I would say you are. One, especially in content, like I'm not too sure if anyone's doing posts twice a day. To be honest, I feel like that's a lot, and I feel like that's probably what it takes to get to that level so quickly, like 7K. That I honestly feel like that seems pretty quick. But in terms of your goals and expectations, and obviously when someone says expectations, there's always hope for the best, expect the worst. But what do you think right now? You're almost at 8K, but from now to next uh 12 months, say this time in August to November, like what's your strategy in terms of, yeah, well, I know you want to be scaling to 100 comments, but what are you going to do differently on how you're going to manage your time as a creator on LinkedIn that you need to start thinking about right now?
Sure. That's a really good question. Basically, this whole year since January, my goal has been to get to 10,000 by the end of the year. So I keep checking that. So I'm like, okay, this week, what did I ended up getting for followers this week? And I mean, followers is a can be a glamour metric, but at the same time, it still gives you more exposure, more viewers than a smaller account. So that's really what you have to kind of aim for. And so I mean, I'm on pace for 12 or 13,000 by the end of the year. So it keeps scaling up from there. So it's like, I was happy with let's say 100 followers a week early on. And then it got to be where it's like 1,000 followers a month, and that was kind of cool too. And then it's like, okay, well now I'm getting up to 300 or 400 per week, so then that gets to be 12 to 1,600 a month for the most part, unless you get 5 weeks in a month. But um, pretty much try and figure out my content that it can feed into people being inspired, people wanting to follow me. um, and I would say the collaboration side of things, even if it's not building off of each other's networks, it's just getting that feeling, that emotion around your brand, that excitement of that you want to team up with other people, that you want to share ideas. um, I'm just trying to bring that kind of energy around it. And so I mean, at this point next year, I haven't really made any goals. Probably will make them at the very end of uh end of this year. But I would say, I don't know, 20,000, and I hope I beat that by, I hope it's 50,000, but I'm thinking 20,000 anyway.
Nice. And I do want to respect your time, and I do really appreciate you being on the podcast. And the whole idea of me just even doing a podcast is one, just to see how my outbound is going and see what kind of networks I can create. Because ultimately, for those who are still trying to figure out what to do, just action speaks way more louder than words. And if you want to switch from consumer to creator, all you have to do is just put out a DM and start building relationships. And for those that want to follow Dustin, he's super active on LinkedIn. And if you just follow his content and just really pick out what he's doing right, is essentially the consistency. In terms of people on LinkedIn, Dustin is very, very consistent when it comes to being super active, just posting every day, twice a day. And that's essentially what it takes. And in summary, one thing that I've really taken out of this podcast is just if you're just doing it every single day for it hasn't even been a year, you want to get to that level. And once you get to that level, you were talking about before, just having a high profile account that has many followers, that says a fair bit when it comes to the negotiating table because yeah, money is one thing, but the other thing that talks is how much attention and influence you gain. One thing I do want to ask you as one last question is, how do you see that as like a negotiation asset when someone's just talking to you in terms of like, oh, this is what I've been doing, plus I've got this account that's at 7K versus I've got this account that's at 600K. I mean, sorry, 600 following.
Sure. Yeah, I would say that in terms of negotiations and just overall influence, I think influence is huge, and I think the attention the eyeballs that you can generate from these kind of accounts is, basically it's hard to even put a dollar amount on that, whether it's money or whether it's opportunities. Um, I think that can bring about, future team ups with companies, with creators, with future employment and that kind of stuff. But I think, yeah, I mean, it just kind of shows what you do with your spare time when you grow a following. And some people will just scroll mindlessly and they don't really learn anything new. They'll learn the current events within the news or something like that, but they don't try and actually build relationships, build community around their name. And I feel like after you've grown one account, you can continue that on other platforms. You can do multiple accounts, whether it's businesses, um, or whatever it would be. But I mean, I follow Daniel Priestley. He's over in the UK, and he's huge in marketing. But he says, the concept behind the key person of influence, and every big brand has one person behind it really that is the face of it, has grown it more than the brand even. So I mean, once you've grown a personal brand, you can create businesses all around that.
Right. Love that. And again, appreciate your time on the podcast. How active are you on LinkedIn? How easy is it for listeners to get in contact with you? Do you have any other source of communication outside of LinkedIn, or how do people reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah, just be LinkedIn. Send me a connection request. Follow. You can always DM. I can't promise that I'll follow up on those always, but as long as you're not selling me something, I'll usually follow up on them.
Dustin, it was a pleasure. And I hope you the best, especially getting to that 15 to 20K mark by the end of the year. I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Philip.